Well, we're just a few days away now from what is debatably the most exciting regions World Cup qualifiers. Probably the most exciting because these teams never play each other apart from the World Cup qualifiers. It is the Oceania, the OFC World Cup qualifiers. Originally going to get underway this weekend on the 13th. That game's been cancelled, but it does in fact get underway next Thursday on the 17th of March. But before we get into any of that, Ryan, how are you?
Mate, I'm good. It feels like we've not done one of these for a little while, have we? And that's purely down to life being busy and getting in the way. But it's nice to be back. Doing a recording, and it feels great now that we're into March and there is now international football back on the calendar. And this could we have a better qualification or a better series of games in March to kind of come back to with a bit of a vengeance? I don't think we could. The fact that this has been cancelled and rearranged, and then almost, as you said, the first game that was then cancelled for other reasons. It just about time, and I think everyone from the region and everyone that's a fan of Minnow Nation football is just licking their lips at the prospect of this tournament. I don't know what it is, mate. The teams I'm buzzing to see. As you said, they never play each other. The fact that this mini tournament is actually like in itself a mini tournament, which is so cool. The fact that it's in Qatar, in the World Cup stadiums, it's just so cool, mate. I can't wait for it. How are you anyway, man?
I'm good. I think you've hit the nail on the head with a few things there. I don't think, AFCON was brilliant. Obviously, we covered that a lot on this channel. AFCON was brilliant. And then February was kind of quiet from an international football standpoint. Wasn't a lot going on really in world football altogether. It was quite a dull month from that perspective. We were very fortunate at D&Q that we managed to get a couple of interviews in towards the end of February, start of the month, so that we could have some stuff to talk about. And those were absolutely fantastic. But now, like you say, we're into March and we've got AFCON qualifiers again because it was delayed last time, and this tournament's been delayed. This tournament really is now. This is it. This is the final COVID-impaired tournament. COVID impaired because it's taking place in Qatar, which is just bonkers for these teams. Really, That's probably the thing I still can't really get my head around is that the Cook Islands, who are unranked, are going to be playing at least 3 games. And no disrespect to the Cook Islands, probably 3 games in these stadiums, in these facilities, these world-class facilities where the World Cup games are going to be played, where the Arab Cup was played. It's just mind-blowing. And I'm looking at it now. I've got split screens, and on one side I've got the fixtures just to remind me of when, where, and what time, etc. And I'm just looking at the flags. And it feels like a dream. Cool. It feels like a dream. I'm looking at Sunday the 20th of March, Solomon Islands versus Vanuatu. And I just can't... I'm just so glad we're finally here with these games coming up.
I mean, mate, it's been years. It's literally been years since most of these teams played. So for us, and we have kind of known about a lot of these teams and players for many years now, but this feels like the longest stretch that we've not had any insight as to who's going to be playing for them. How are these teams going to actually match up? Who's across those 2 years when they've not played? Who's benefited from that? Who's coming back with a better squad? Who's going to struggle? And the thing is, no one really knows. No one really knows. Obviously, New Zealand are the favourites, right? Standard. Everyone knows that. But it's the battles between the other nations that I know I'm so just looking forward to seeing how it all comes out, man. I'm so buzzing. How do you want to like talk about this tournament? We're doing a preview now, aren't we, right? Are we going to go through kind of Group A and Group B and just touch on each team and then maybe give some predictions at the end as to how we all see it faring?
Well, I think if we talk through... So for anyone that doesn't know by now, Tonga Cook Islands was going to be the head-to-head on the 13th of March for the preliminary game. They were going to fly two teams 15,000 miles each to play each other once, and then one of them was going to go home. Probably not the best idea anyway. That probably could have happened... I mean, obviously, it couldn't have happened anyway because of everything that's gone on, but they probably could have just done that in the Cook Islands or in Tonga maybe months ago, just to sort that.
It's not great from like a sustainability standpoint, is it?
It wasn't great, which is FIFA, by the way, which is FIFA's move on that. Ultimately, the reason it's in Qatar is because no one wanted to host it because of COVID. But let's talk about what is now then match day one. We'll talk about the teams that are going head-to-head in Group A and Group B, and of course that will then cover the teams. And we'll talk, as we go through, about some of the key players in both those opening fixtures, but then also throughout the tournament as well. And we start with an incredible opening game for the unranked Cook Islands as they face Solomon Islands in the opening game of this tournament. I don't know much about the Cook Islands. I don't know much about them,
mate. The Cook Islands is it's amazing, by the way. So, firstly, has there ever been an unranked nation that's taken part in the World Cup qualification campaign? There might be somewhere, but I don't think that instance would have repeated itself too many times across footballing history. So I was doing some reading on the Cook Islands, and you are gonna. And I've snipped a quote from an article that I was reading, because I think you'll love it, because and it segues nicely from the point that you've just made there about I don't know much about the Cook Islands, mate. I don't even think the Cook Islands know that much about the Cook Islands, right? So the manager, there was an interview with the manager basically talking about he fully knows there's no pressure on them. Standard, there's all the pressure is going to be on the other side when they come up against them. And then you will love this, and I'm going to just read this word for word. Travel restrictions created by the pandemic mean a large portion of the Cook Islands squad will meet each other for the first time in Qatar, days ahead of their tournament opener against the Solomons. 8 members of the squad are set to travel from New Zealand, along with 4 from Australia and 1 from the United Kingdom, with even Coach Taylor yet to meet many of them. It's just amazing. I mean, it's amazing.
Who's coming from the UK? We need to meet this guy. We need to speak to this guy.
I was looking at the squad. I don't know. I didn't recognise a name or a team, like a UK team or anything. Yeah. But I mean, need we say more about the Cook Islands? I mean, I read that and I was like, I've got to get that in. I've got to mention that. Amazing.
But I will say, the Cook Islands, an unranked nation. Would they have beaten Tonga? Maybe. Both sides are quite poor. The Cook Islands will now play 3 games in these massive stadiums in Qatar. They will probably go out. I'm going to use the word probably, but I could probably say it definitively as well. But honestly, who cares? Because this is probably the greatest experience any Cook Islands side will ever have. They normally come in the bottom of the bottom of the groups. They've not got to play New Zealand. They will probably be on the end of some heavy defeats, but hopefully nothing too embarrassing for them. But what a ride for these players! Like you say, a player coming from the UK, a couple of players coming from Oz, New Zealand. I mean, the bonds that they will create and the stories that they will be able to tell. The UK player, for example, I represented the Cook Islands in Qatar.
Yeah, so cool,
it's stunning. And they're up against the Solomon Islands, as we've mentioned in match day 1. And the Solomons, well, they've had a couple of pre-World Cup qualifier friendlies. One on the day that we're recording this, actually, against the Queensland Lions in Australia. I think they're looking pretty good, Ryan.
Mate, they were looking potent, weren't they? Looked a little bit suspect at the back. They won the game 4-2 for anyone that didn't catch that or doesn't follow DNQ on Twitter, because we tweeted about it. If you don't follow us, small plug, follow us. And yeah, a little bit suspect at the back. Going forward, mate, now we knew that these guys were quick. Jesus, the pace. The pace is electric. It was really good to see, actually, the likes of Leah Alafa for the Solomon Islands. Gagame Feni down that left was flying. And that in Qatar, bigger pitches, when they're up against some of the better sides that they'll come up against in their group, Tahiti, Vanuatu, and then if they get through, if they're up against some of the better, maybe say New Zealand, that pace on the counter could be so interesting to watch, mate. It was, I have to say, really good to watch them today, mate. I don't know what you thought of that game, but they moved the ball well. The technical ability was better than I thought it would be, actually. Little 1-2s, third man runs, little flicks around corners, rotating possession side. Honestly, mate, I really enjoyed that game. And the fact that they were a little bit frail at the back, but then kind of great going forward, just sets yourself up for kind of games with plenty of goals in, doesn't it? So, mate, they're looking good. They're looking good.
They were looking sharp, and I think, you know, I just want to kind of clarify for people who might not know much about this. You know, these teams never play. They never play each other. And you know, people who don't know football in Oceania would probably not expect much of these sides. But 1-4-2 in the world, the Solomon Islands. 1-4-2 in the world. And you think about that and you think, oh, that's not very good. Then you think about it a bit more and you think, actually, that's not bad. You know, they're higher than Nicaragua, who we've seen in the CONCACAF Nations League. They're around the same rank as Suriname and Kitts and Nevis. You know, just some sides I'm throwing out there that are around them in the World Cup in the FIFA World Rankings. They're not a bad side. We watched the Mahinda Rajapaksa Trophy, a tournament that involved sides like Bangladesh, sides like the Seychelles, and things like that. Solomon Islands, technically, streets ahead in terms of their ability.
I think so, mate.
Yeah, and you know, it was probably on a slightly better pitch than the pitches out in Colombo in Sri Lanka. But,
yeah,
you know, there's blistering pace. I think a lot of the sides in the Oceania region have natural athleticism. But, like you say, on those big pitches, on the flat surface, where the players, they're not going to be miscontrolling it the same amount.
No.
You know? And of course that will benefit New Zealand. Of course it will benefit New Zealand, who will be the best team, of course. But I think we will see a real testament to the footballing ability of some of these players. And don't forget that the Solomon Islands, who of course we're focusing on now, they're up there in terms of world futsal, which is, you know, and Timo Jankowski spoke about this from the Fiji FA as well. These players are technically gifted, that they've played their whole lives on terrible pitches and they've adapted to that terrible conditions. You know, they've not got £200 boots like you know, even grassroots players in England have. These are players who have got real technical ability, and with the pace as well. I think the Solomon Islands are going into this in really good form. Yeah,
man. Mate, they are I think for the other two sides in that group, Vanuatu and Tahiti, they'll all be keeping tabs on who's performing and how people are getting on in their kind of pre-qualification friendlies and stuff. They'll be fearing that side, surely. And it really will, you know, but again, we've not seen what Tahiti and Vanuatu have really got to offer. So we've looked at that Solomon side thinking they look tasty. Who knows what the Tahitians and Vanuatu squads come in prep like? But no, first sort of impressions so far from Solomon's is they're going to be. I mean, first they're going to be exciting, aren't they? Whatever happens, there's going to be goals in their games, I think. And then the Tahitians and Vanuatu and the Vanuatu teams that make up Group A. How do you see those two sides? Kind of what's your early thoughts on them going into this? Well, the first round of games and all of the games really in Group A.
Well, it's a really interesting one because, of course, people around the world may remember Tahiti from the Confederations Cup, where they famously scored that goal against Nigeria. But easy to forget, that was almost a decade ago now, that game. And you look at it and you think, actually now I'd say on paper, Vanuatu may even have some of the bigger players, some of the bigger names. You know, Cooper is a good player, but probably the rock at the back, Brian Kaltak, pace, power, determination, just an all-round brilliant player really for that level. Been in and around the kind of A-League and the top league in New Zealand as well throughout his career. I think that Vanuatu, I think that this result will be massive for Group A because the Solomons should beat the Cook Islands. And then and then the thing is, with a one fixture round robin, if Vanuatu beat Tahiti, it's tough for Tahiti to recover because they would then have to beat the Solomons and the Cook Islands, you'd imagine. So I think that this could be very, very interesting. I think if I had to back a side, I would probably say Vanuatu, just on what I've seen in recent years, which is a little bit more from the league sides in terms of the OFC Champions League stuff, and a little bit more from some of the under-19s and under-20s international football that I've seen. But I think that a key thing to note is in the next couple of days, Fiji and Vanuatu are due to play each other in a friendly before the tournament gets underway, and I think that will show really how far Vanuatu have come. They've always been a solid side in that region, and I think that there's probably more of a demand on Tahiti to step up than there is Vanuatu. What about yourself?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, you've mentioned like big Brian. Like they've got some big players, haven't they? Vanu, big Brian Kautak. It's his third World Cup qualification campaign for Vanuatu as captain. He's been in and around it. Obviously, not in the same environment that they'll be in this time round, but experienced pros. Kautak, Cooper. Was looking at the squad, and you've got names that we know: Ronaldo Wilkins, legendary strike, on automatic Batic,
as we call him, Andre Batic, automatic Batic. So they're a threat. Tahiti, they do have the legendary Tioni Te'au in the squad. Half of their squad is made up of players from one team called AS Venus, who are Polynesian Cup champions. So I tell you what they do have, or what they kind of have a benefit with, is they. You find out with a couple of these nations from this region is all of the players come together from only a few clubs, so they have that that kind of team cohesion that maybe the likes of Vanuatu won't have, because the players have been a little bit more disjointed across the last couple of years, not had much football as a team. So it's really interesting. You've kind of touched on how the fixtures play out, but the last game for Tahiti is against the Solomons. So, from a Vanuatu standpoint, if they do enough against Tahiti and Solomons in their first two games, they've got Cook Islands as their final fixture, and you'd think they'll win that. If they can do enough, they'll be in a good space for that last game. So, yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see. It's exciting. I think it is exciting. I think that it's huge, and that will, as we've said, potentially determine how Group A shapes up, because the Cook Islands will then play Tahiti, and then there's that huge clash, as I mentioned earlier, between the Solomons and Vanuatu before Vanuatu's final game, which probably works out quite nicely for them if they're in a position to qualify and need a win. If they're in a must-win position, they do play the Cook Islands, which you would expect them to win in match day 3 in Group A. But moving on to Group B, of course, probably the better group on paper, if we're perfectly honest, just across the board, and a huge part of that is tournament favourites New Zealand, who have slipped outside the top 100 in FIFA World Rankings, but did recently beat Curaçao in an international friendly that was actually played in Qatar. So that just benchmarks for you that they are still a really, really strong side. Opening game in that group is Papua New Guinea versus New Zealand. Ryan, how do you see this one shaping up?
I think it'll be a New Zealand win. I mean, the only question mark over New Zealand for the first couple of games is who of their squad is going to be missing, and who's going to join up when. The actual official kind of FIFA international window isn't until, I don't think, 23rd, 24th March. I'm not certain when it actually begins. So you've got the likes of Chris Wood and those professional New Zealanders that are European based and have club football responsibilities or duties or whatever. How is that going to impact the squad for those first game, or for that first game in particular, or for the games 1 and 2? I still do think, though, that they will have enough New Zealand for that game, for that first game against PNG, and in that group altogether to get a spot in the top 2. As you said, look, the fact that they only play each other once does lend itself nicely, because you think, if someone can just get a result against them. But we're going to be the way that we've spoken about the stadiums and the pitch and the facilities and everything, and how that's going to be amazing for a lot of these nations and a lot of these players. New Zealand have players that are used to playing in these kind of environments on these surfaces, and that's going to suit their play a lot better. You're going to be playing on carpets. They're not going to be having to go for a tricky away game to Port Vila in Vanuatu and face a kind of a raucous crowd in a tough environment with probably a bobbly pitch or something like that. So look, PNG will be well prepped for it. We had a good chat with Alwyn come along, didn't we, on the channel, and he spoke about how they kind of the whole squad brings their A game. You know, New Zealand is the cup final for a lot of these nations, and I'm sure they'll be up for it. They'll give them a good game. I still think New Zealand will get the better of them, though, mate. What about yourself?
I honestly feel like if anyone's going to beat New Zealand, it's got to be PNG in match day 1, because like you said, New Zealand won't be full strength. I've seen today reports that the New Zealand side will come in 3 waves. They will have their initial squad that can make it out there, but the All Whites as they're known, and then there'll be phases 2 and 3 of players adding in as clubs release their players for international duty. Timo Jankowski, when we spoke to him, said as much as they want to beat New Zealand, he's not in favour of that. He doesn't believe that that's the right way that World Cup qualifiers should take place. And whilst I agree with him, I don't think Papua New Guinea will care if they can somehow sneak even a point out of this game.
Yeah. Wasn't Alwyn saying that they've done a few training camps as well? So the whole squad have had 1, 2 or 3 training camps as PNG. So, you know, you've got a squad there that have been together and training together for months now ahead of this. So
exactly,
I get all of that, mate. I still think New Zealand will probably have too much, but
I think New Zealand will be very disappointed if they don't win it. But I feel that whilst they are still overwhelming favourites for this game, this is the only game in which there could be that banana skin, unless they win their first 2 and take their foot off the gas against New Caledonia in match 3. Depends what's on the line for these sides, of course. But PNG, the only thing that they really boast and have actively boasted across the last few years is with Alwyn Comalong and his brother at the back. They do have a bit more defensive resilience than some of the other sides from the OFC who just attack. And it will be very interesting to see how this game goes. I do predict a New Zealand win. I think they will still have a little bit too much, but I think that this will be a close one. That is the early kickoff on Friday, the 18th of March, and later that day, New Caledonia play Fiji in a similar game to the sort of Tahiti Vanuatu. This is kind of a must-win for both sides. Get 3 points on the door. How do you see this one going?
It's huge.
It's massive.
I mean, because you go in, you think New Zealand are going to win all of them. So when they play each other, they've got to get the points needed to get through to that semi-final. How do I see it going? Oh, mate, you know what? I don't know. When we spoke to Timo on the channel, I don't know about you. I came away with that thinking, I fancy Fiji to do well here. I don't know. He just he seemed to sell me on how well that they were, how kind of the squad was shaping up. I think this query around Roy Krishna is it's tricky, isn't it? So he won't be released until earliest match day 2. That's right, isn't it?
That's the current belief. Yes, his side in the ISL have reached the cup semi-final, which is a 2-legger. It's believed that he will play at least the first leg. If they play both and get through to the final, he might miss all the group games. It depends when the club releases him. This is huge for Fiji. This is your best player of all time potentially missing from these games.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with him missing for that first game, I'd have to probably give the advantage to New Cal. And I think the teams will be fairly even, but I think from a psychological standpoint as well, Fiji, you've been waiting so long. New coach, Fleming, who knows the region well, but when you're missing the star man, it's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult. It'd be interesting to see how they go through it though, Fiji. As I said, I think I'm excited to see them more than any other team. I'm excited for the whole thing, but I think Fiji more than anything, just because of that Jankowski interview that we had, mate. The fact that I almost feel bought into their vision. The fact that they've got Fleming in as manager, ex-PNG manager, knows the region so well, knows these teams inside out, and knows how to get results. I don't know. It's going to be so close. But Newcastle have got a bit of an OFC legendary squad, haven't they? With, some of the attackers, Bertrand Kai, Gope Fenepej, some of the players they've got. Just, I don't know, mate. I don't know. How do you see it?
I think in the 2026 World Cup qualifiers, Fiji will be the side. I think that they will, if they don't have Krishna, I think that they will struggle, because I feel bad for the rest of the squad and for the gaffer with this, because against sides that are slightly stronger, your whole tactic is just sit behind the ball and give the ball to Krishna on the counter-attack with these big pitches. It's tough for New Caledonia. Wesley Lautoa.
That's a great shout, actually.
Cesar Ziola.
Such an experienced team, mate. Such an experienced team.
And like you say, you've already touched on Bertrand Kai, a player 38 years of age, still a phenomenal player, playing just 3 years ago in the Club World Cup qualifiers, because his side from New Caledonia won the OFC Champions League. I mean, Gope Fenepej played in the French leagues as well. The French contingent, of course, New Caledonia, but players that have played in the French leagues, it will be very, very interesting to see how that impacts this game. This game comes at the worst possible time for Fiji. I mean, none of the group games are easy, but if they'd have had New Zealand to start with, it would have been a bit of a free hit without Krishna. This New Cal game's must win. I hope for Timo and the boys that they can maybe get that win, or they can get a decent result, because like you say, I came away from that interview thinking, where's my Fiji shirt? I need to get my Krishna tattoo.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know what it was. I think it's just the way he spoke, mate. Just sort of you kind of bought into it. It was really cool. So, yeah, it's been a shame to hear about Krishna. And I mean, it's not for him. He's doing well at club level, isn't he? But huge for them, man. Huge for them.
It is huge for them. And how do you see the rest of this group shaping up? Do you think that it all hinges on really who beats who out of the rest of them?
Yeah, it does. You know what? I don't even know, mate. I don't even know. It's so close, honestly. And the fact, as we've said, they've not played for 2 years properly, these sides. So we don't know who's going to bring what. I am going to, just because I'm a Timo Jankowski fan, I'm going to go New Zealand and Fiji to be the top two that go through. I think if Fiji get a result in that first game against New Cal, they've then got New Zealand. Oh, that's tough. But then their final game, PNG, if Krishna's there, Fleming knows the PNG squad well. He'll have them well prepped for it. They'll edge it, mate. They'll edge it and sneak through, I hope. So that's how I see it as a top two. What about yourself?
I'm going to have to go New Zealand, New Cal.
Woo!
And the reason why is actually something that our good friend Alwyn Comalong said, was that historically PNG hate playing New Cal. They never seem to beat them. There's always just something. They're bogey team. And I think in this round robin, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, Fiji will have to win. They'll have to beat New Caledonia. But if New Caledonia have got that hoodoo over PNG and beat them, those 3 points could be enough. That could be a critical game. And I also think an interesting one about this is, don't write off goal difference, because if Fiji and New Caledonia draw with each other, or one of the other sides draws, it could come down to, as depressing as this sounds, who loses to New Zealand by the least. So it will be interesting, because I'd then argue that PNG have got one of the more sort of established defences, and the style of football might be a bit more reserved. The only thing I can say for absolute certain is that this is going to be a fantastic group stage for all 8 teams involved.
So good, man. So good. I think you're going to see established OFC legends with almost like one last dance, and then is this the coming of the new era for some of these nations, some of these players, not only putting themselves kind of in the spotlight from playing in a World Cup qualification, but the fact that this World Cup qualification is in Qatar, in these huge, incredible stadiums, facilities, eyes of the world, or definitely at least eyes of the region. On these games, mate. We can't wait, man. We can't wait. And then I guess it would only be fair to give is it even worth giving the prediction? I'll tell you what, should we do? If we say, if New Zealand don't get the Inter-Confed playoff spot, who do you think gets it?
If it's not New Zealand, wow.
Yeah. If it's not New Zealand,
I think the first thing I'll say is the only way it's not New Zealand is if they meet someone for the first time in the final. What I mean by that is I don't think that they would get to the final against the side that they maybe came runner-up in their group and then suddenly lose to them. I think it would be New Zealand win their group, another team win Group A, they both win their semi-final, and they both meet for the first time in the final. Just something there. And because of that, I'm going to go with the Solomon Islands, actually.
Really?
Maybe just because I've seen the most.
Fair enough. I've got no issues with that. My random guess was going to be Vanuatu, actually.
Yeah.
Just because if you think you're playing against New Zealand, you want that solidity. You think about a solid spine of the team. Kautak, Cooper, Tangis. Oh, I don't know, mate. I don't know.
But all we know is that the single-leg semi-finals are on the 27th of March, with the grand finale being played on the 30th of March. An incredible tournament that we've got lined up, and D&Q is 100% the right place to be if you want to be kept up to date with everything and anything to do with this tournament. We are going to be on it like a rash, because this is one of our favourite regions.
On it like a rash. All over it like a rash.
Same thing.
Love it.
Yes. We'll be all over it.
I've thrown you off. There we go. Yeah.
Like a bear on honey. Anyway, we will be all over it. This is the 100% the right place to be. Subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a like on this video if you haven't. And I'm really hopeful to go to Qatar. I'm really
Yes. That's worth chatting about. Surely. Tom has media accreditation for Qatar from OFC. So we just need him to sort out the finer details with Qatar. And we could well have some live reporting or some vlogs from Qatar over the first week of the qualification, Tom. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, so if I'm able to, it will be for the entire group stage. At minimum, if I manage to get out there, it will be for the first 2 match days in the group. I won't be able to stay, unfortunately, until the end of the tournament, but I think that group stage coverage would just be amazing anyway. The only things to sort out now are things, of course, to do with COVID-19. I am jabbed, so it shouldn't be too much of a hurdle. And yes, I have my OFC media accreditation, which means I can be part of pre-match and post-match stuff to do with OFC.
Nice.
The only thing we're waiting for confirmation on is, because the Qatar FA are the people who actually run the games, being pitch side and having that kind of press involvement for the games as well. But that means that D&Q is 100% the right place to be for all stuff to do with this tournament. And even if I don't manage to go, I'm going to be all over it like a bear on honey. So,
love it.
100%
Yeah.
the right place to be. Who do you think's going to win it? Drop a comment on this video, wherever you're from, wherever you're joining us from. Who do you think is going to win this tournament? That is all from us on D&Q. We're about to pop up the 2 interviews we've had with OFC legends. So do click on one of those. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. It's been great to have you with us. We'll see you next time.